Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. This is Stephen Kirkpatrick with Executive Speakers on Speakers. Have a special edition today specifically targeted towards sales, marketing, associates, executives, people in the trenches, and all in between. I have best-selling author of The Challenger Sale, The Effortless Experience, and Challenger Customer, world-renowned sales and customer experience guru with me on the phone, Matt Dixon. Matt, how are you today?
Hey, Stephen, how you doing? Pleasure to be with you today.
Well, listen, thanks so much. I know everyone's kind of gearing up, looking at 2020, trying to wrap up 2019 on a high note, but 2020 is fastly approaching and looking at kickoffs and goals and how to meet those and what we need to do. And so we wanted to highlight you and some of your content today to try and give some people some nuggets to think on. So you've been at this for a while. That's not an indictment on your age. That's really just saying you've looked at this for a lot and have a passion for it. And I'm curious, what are you seeing as some of the biggest challenges in the market today for salespeople?
Yeah, it's a great question, and Stephen, I think that the truth is that, the pace of change in sales is, it's slow, and, you don't see massive changes in the way that companies sell every year. You tend to see it every few decades. And part of that is because, we change the way we sell as sales organizations largely in response to the ways that our customers change how they buy. And I think, what we saw going back several years now, if I think back to when we started a lot of our research around the Challenger Sale, we decided to take a kind of a fresh look at customer buying behavior. And the reason we did that was that a lot of companies, a lot of sales leaders, sales managers were telling us, the old approaches to selling, the ones that we've been training our sales reps on, going back to the 70s, if you will, the tried and true kind of approaches of solution selling, they're just not working the way that they used to. And when we dug into it with data, we found that there's a pretty good reason for that. And it wasn't that these sales leaders were off their rockers. They were absolutely right. The big change that happened was that suddenly customers had access to all kinds of information and advice that they never used to have access to. So again, if you think about what I said before, sales doesn't change that fast, and customer buying behavior doesn't change that fast. If you think about the big difference between how people bought solutions or products and services from suppliers back in the 70s, and you fast forward to today, really the big difference is the amount of information the customer has access to. Back in the 70s, this was probably, and I'm gonna steal shamelessly from Neil Rackham, who wrote the bestseller Spin Selling, and he also wrote the foreword to the Challenger Sale. We've known Neil for many years, and he called that time. Back in the 70s, sort of the golden age of the talking brochure salesperson. This is the salesperson who could, pardon the expression, but show up and throw up. They could show up and talk all about their company, their products, their services, their solutions. And, to be honest, there was no other way that a customer
could door-to-door vacuum salesman.
That's right.
Where has he gone?
That's right. That's right. And back in the day, though, there was no other way for a customer to learn about you and what you had, what solutions you had to sell, what kinds of things you could do for a customer without sitting down and talking to a salesperson. But you fast forward to today, today customers have access to tons of information, not just on suppliers' websites. They can go on a company's website, a vendor's website, and download, find out all about their products and services, how they compare to the competition, use cases and customer success stories and ROI calculators and the whole 9 yards. And they can learn a ton about what these vendors can do for them and what value they offer. And they can do all that without sitting down with the salesperson. In fact, I think the data points that the research, the Challenger Sale was most well known for putting out there in the marketplace was today's customer, we found, was 57% of the way through the purchase journey before they ever sat down with a salesperson. We didn't do this research back in the 70s, right? Sure. But if we did, I think that might have been, 5 to 10% of the way through the purchase process. But like I said, there was no internet. There's no way to find out this stuff. And today, customers can learn on their own. In fact, I think that's the biggest challenge facing today's salespeople, sales managers, sales organizations, is the risk that their salespeople get disintermediated. They get boxed out of the decision-making process, that their customer goes out and learns all sorts of things about what that supplier can do for them. But they do all that learning without the salesperson there to chaperone them on their learning journey, to inform that learning journey. And what ends up happening for the salesperson is they get put in this box and backed into a corner, if you will, forced to compete on price. Because when your phone rings and that customer who's done all their due diligence, when they call you up and they send you that RFP and they say, hey, we know what we want, you're on the short list, you and two other competitors, come on in, make your best offer. The customers stop caring about who's best. All they care about is who's cheapest. And it puts your salespeople today in a really, really tough spot.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. And I think too, back in the 70s, a lot of times people didn't know all the products that were out there. And so it was someone who came in and say, hey, like, you have a need for this. And I think there was a lot more kind of looking to the salesperson as, I don't know how you say it, kind of an expert or things like that.
Yeah, that's right. And now the customer looks at the salesperson, frankly, as most salespeople, as just a biased source of information. If I really want the straight scoop, I'm going to go to the supplier's websites. I'm going to download all their white papers and use cases and ROI calculators. I'm going to go to LinkedIn and see what do companies and executives like me, who do they buy from? What do they think of these different suppliers? Who should I do business with? I'm going to enlist third-party purchasing consultants who are going to give me their advice. But you know what? I don't want to talk to a salesperson because they're just going to spin me, right? They're not going to give me the straight scoop.
So obviously there's still salespeople out there. So what are the most successful salespeople doing to have success in this market?
Yeah, this was really the core of our research and over the past 10 years. And really all that, some of the thinking and the highlights of that captured in the Challenger sale and then later the Challenger customer. What we found was, the Challenger sale was, as many folks who've read the book will know, was a study of salespeople. And we found that all salespeople fall into one of 5 statistically driven profiles or statistically defined profiles. I won't go through all 5. But I will say that the one that sort of jumps out across the 5 is the relationship builder. That's the salesperson who really sits on the customer's side of the table. They really diagnose what does this customer need. They ask great questions. They find out what's keeping that customer up at night, and then they try to address those needs for the customer. They try to see things from the customer's perspective. They've got the customer's back when things go wrong. They lobby for the customer inside their own organization because they know their customers don't have time to do so. They fight with finance to get those customers the discount they really need, or
Thank
with
God
legal
for finance.
That's right.
What would we do without finance, Andrew?
That's right. And so that classically, if you look at the 5 profiles, that's the one that classically jumped out. That's the sort of classic solution selling rep. But what we found was that those people don't actually win in today's sales environment. In fact, they come in dead last when you look at high performance. If you only look at high performers, the top 20% of salespeople, the lowest percentage of those high performers are the relationship builder profile, and the top profile is the challenger profile. Now, the challenger is distinguished from the relationship builder because the challenger is coming in with a point of view. They're coming in with a point of view. Sometimes that point of view is disruptive and provocative for the customer. Their posture is, I'm not going to ask the customer what's keeping them up at night. I'm going to tell them what should be keeping them up at night. And then I'm going to, if you will, prescribe needs for them and give them insight. All right. So what we found was that your best salespeople, the way that they were dealing with this propensity of customers to box them out, to learn on their own, was to bring in new insight. And what we find is those challenger salespeople actually do get in early because customers see them as a source of insight. Hey, I'm not gonna move a muscle until I talk to Steven at Executive Speakers, because every time I talk to Steven, I'm going to learn something new about this particular area. And that's how those best salespeople avoid that, that tendency for most salespeople to get boxed out, because they see that the relationship today is a lot more than just doing whatever your customer asks you for. It's about telling the customer what's best for them and leveraging your expertise. So in many respects, the burden is really high on today's salespeople. It's not enough to just be able to do a demo, to know your talk track and your script and your pitch deck really cold. You got to do more than that. You got to bring new ideas to the customer. Again, bring those ideas that the customer's not even asking about, that lead to your solution uniquely. That's that's a wholly different approach to selling for today's salespeople. And what I'd say is, if we go back even before the 70s, that was the era of, really just product selling, I'd call it, just selling widgets based on features and benefits. You get fast forward to the 70s, and what became very popular is this approach of solution selling, going in, diagnose the customer's needs, ask them great questions, and hope that the customer articulates a need that you can attach your solution to or your value proposition to. Now, fast forward to today, we've left the era of solution selling, and we've entered a new era that we call insight selling. So this is where best salespeople and best sales organizations win and capture customer mindshare, and they avoid that 57% phenomenon we talked about before, because they traffic in insight. They bring new ideas to the customer, and when they do that, those customers invite them in early because they see them as teaching them things that they didn't know on their own. They bring ideas they couldn't find out on LinkedIn or on the internet.
Yeah, and that's awesome, and that's it's fascinating. It's a definite shift, kind of from seeing people going from, hey, I'm trying to sell you a solution or a widget, to I'm kind of coming on your team as a consultant and really kind of telling you like what you need to be looking at, instead of saying, hey, here's the solution I provide. This is what you need to look at.
It's funny on that point, Stephen, is for a long time, and I hear this from sales leaders all the time, they want their salespeople to be trusted advisors, right? That's a word that's been around for a really long time. And I think I would agree. I would say, your best salespeople are trusted advisors, but what that means has really changed over the years. Today's trusted advisor, and to be clear, challengers, they don't, it's not that they don't build relationships, but they build great relationships, but they build relationships based on business value, not just doing whatever the customer wants. And in a world where customers can learn on their own, it's not enough to just do whatever your customer wants and ask them what's keeping them up at night and try to address their needs. You got to do more than that. The bar has gone up for today's salespeople, and that's what it really means to be a trusted advisor today, whereas, how we would define that, 10, 20, 30 years ago might have been a bit different.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. So I want to come back to the trusted advisor thing in a second, because I think that's a really interesting just topic to dive into. But one of the things I really appreciate about the Challenger sale, and also too just about your content, is this isn't Matt Dixon's opinion. This isn't just Matt sitting on his couch.
Thank God for that. So,
Matt sitting on his couch like, hey, I really think this is going to work. This is great. This is grounded in research. This has stood the test of, just talking to a lot of people, analyzing data. Talk a little about the process that brought about the Challenger sale in the book, if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's a great question. I get asked a lot, why did, because there's no shortage of sales books out there. And there are dozens, if not hundreds, written and published in any given year. And people ask me, why was it that Challenger resonated so much and continues to resonate with sales leaders and with salespeople? And I think there's a few reasons. I think one is what we talked about before. People saw the world changing. They saw that we were starting to enter a different era of selling and buying behavior, but they didn't have a name for it, and they hadn't yet put their finger on what was happening. And so I think we gave language to that, and we helped define that and sort of chart a way forward. I think the other reason is what you said, is that this is not my opinion or my co-author Brent Adamson's opinion. This is based on data. We're researchers. There are so many salespeople out there, so many sales books out there that start with something along the lines of, in my 30, 40 years of sales experience, here, let me share with you my secrets to success. And by the way, to be clear, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a fine way to share insight, and it makes for great content and great stories. But it tends to be a limited sample, right? What worked for one person may not work for other people. And I think the fact that we brought data, we did a large-scale quantitative study, and we brought data to bear against this really big question, like, why isn't the classic sales approach of solution selling we've been using for years, why isn't it working anymore? And how has customer buying behavior changed? And what does it mean to be successful today? The fact that we brought data to bear made it a very different story, because, candidly, sales leaders haven't been exposed to that kind of research historically. I would argue the last time they saw this kind of research was in Neil Rackham's Spin Selling book, which was probably really the big book that codified a lot of the solution selling approach back in the 70s and 80s. And I think we again entered this new era. But part of the reason that Neil agreed to write the foreword he said he's asked to write a lot of forwards to a lot of books, and the first thing he does is he flips through it, and if he doesn't see a lot of bar charts and, a statistical analysis, he kind of puts it on the shelf and he writes a polite note and he says, thanks, but no thanks, I'm going to take a pass. But he said what caught our attention, he never met us before, was the fact that we took a database approach. And then I would say the third reason that it resonated with folks is, it's controversial. It marks a big change in the way that we sell, in the way that we engage our customers. And that causes people to think. I always tell people when I come and do a keynote, at a sales kickoff, I say, look, I think I'm an entertaining guy.
Right.
But if you want entertainment, there's lots of speakers who can be very entertaining and can deliver entertainment. I'm going to force people to think and think really hard, not just your salespeople, but your managers, your sales leaders, your marketing team, about their role in building and managing and leading a sales organization that's going to be successful moving forward. And that's going to cause you to rethink a lot of your core assumptions about what do customers want from us? What does it mean to build a great relationship? What does it mean to be a great salesperson? And so it's really thought-provoking. I think that's, for me, when I leave the stage and when I get follow-up notes on email and LinkedIn and Twitter and things like that afterwards saying, the feedback that resonates most strongly for me is I love that it was a database perspective. It was a fact-based, clear-eyed view of sales effectiveness. And boy, you really made me rethink my own approach as a salesperson, and you give me a lot of food for thought. When I hear that, I feel like I've done my job.
Well, I think too, the book and the Challenger Sale is so well researched, and the data is so well presented. People may hate the Challenger Sale, but at least they've got to interact and respond to the data, whether they love it or they hate it. I mean, there's enough there for them to say, hey, you at least need to think about this.
That's
which,
right.
I mean, like at the end of the day, it's like if that makes you more excited about your solution or another solution, I mean, the book is still doing a good job, and it's worth a read, even if you're not sold on how it's done. So let's go back.
Well, I appreciate it. And I would actually say, for people, when they think, I generally put, presentations I do into two different categories. I think on the one hand, you got organizations who are, they're heading down the challenger path, and they use this as an opportunity to ground everyone in the research and the idea and the concepts before they go and train folks, build challenger messages, et cetera. But there's a lot of companies who invite me out to present, and their posture is, we're going to keep selling the way that we do, but what we think is important as leaders is to make sure our salespeople are exposed to the latest thinking in sales, because we want to push their thinking. We want them to hear it from us, and we want them to see that, we're not sticking our heads in the sand. We're bringing the latest thinking to them. And we may or may not pursue, doing, training people in this way or building these kinds of messages. But what's most important is that we expose our people to this thinking so that they're well informed and well equipped when they go out into the market.
Awesome. So I want to go back to this trusted advisor
Sure.
term that you had, and also kind of too, just talking about this as from a perspective of sales executives and managers. So how would you tell a sales executive to support a person who fits the profile of a challenger sales person, or how would you kind of say this is a good way for you to kind of start thinking about evolving people into being a challenger sales?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the things we always tell people, or I always tell people from the stage is, look, challenger, it might seem like it's a story only about individual skills, like salesperson skills, but it's as much a story about organizational capability. So this is a story for sales managers, for sales leaders, for sales operations, for marketing, for corporate leadership, for product. Being a challenger organization is not, that can't be done just by the challenger salesperson. The challenger salesperson's got to be supported by a village. And a couple of the, when I look at organizations who try and fail or struggle with this insight-based selling approach or this challenger selling approach, there's usually two big reasons. I think the first one is that managers and leaders don't know how to support their reps and coach to those new behaviors. And because the truth is, when we talk about challengers, there are three big skill sets we talk about. One is their ability to teach customers new things, to bring new ideas to the table. We talked about that before. But there's a couple others. One is the ability to tailor a message for the person sitting on the other side of the table. That may be a finance person. That may be a business unit leader. That may be a technology leader. It may be a committee of folks. And so you've got to be able to take that insight, that idea, and tailor it so that it resonates at a personal level with each of those stakeholders. So that's the second skill set. And the third one is being assertive, right? Not being rude or aggressive or obnoxious. That's a sixth profile we call the jerk. This is the challenger, right? We're talking about, how do you hold your ground?
Can you please write a follow-up book called The Jerk and Selling?
Right.
Just about that. I think it'd be great.
Yeah. Well, I think there's plenty of those books out there, so it'd be a good study we could go run. But I would say, your challengers are assertive. They hold their ground when things get tough with the customer, when they push back on your insight, your provocative idea, when they push back on your pricing or your terms and conditions, whatever the situation is. But challengers are assertive. They hold their ground. They get the conversation back to value. If you think about those three things, teaching, tailoring, being assertive, or taking control, as we call it in the book, those aren't skills you can master in the classroom, right? Those are lessons that you learn and behaviors you develop over time. In the way that salespeople develop those behaviors, you can expose them, and you should expose them to those concepts with great challenger training. But the way they develop those over time is working hand in hand with their sales manager, who is a gifted coach and who can develop those behaviors. Now, the problem is most managers confuse coaching with performance management. So
yep.
I'd call that spreadsheet coaching, right? Checking on how many calls you did this week, or how many proposals you sent out, or how many demos you did. That's not coaching, that's performance management. And there's a time and a place for performance management, but your best sales managers understand that coaching is about helping to drive and develop the behaviors for a salesperson that are going to make them more successful. That's agnostic of activity levels and sales process and things like that. It is much more behavior focused. And so that's the first thing, is that companies stumble because their sales managers and their leaders aren't really committed to coaching to these challenger behaviors. The second one is the organization doesn't equip their salespeople with insightful things to say. It's not the job of the salesperson to come up with these new insights.
Yep.
In fact, that's the last thing we want our salespeople doing, spending their time on. We want them selling. It's usually the job of marketing and product and everyone else sitting around the table to come up with those insights. Now, it's not free consulting. We need those insights to lead to our solution, because we're trying to sell stuff here, right? So
right.
We need to put insights on the table, put them in front of the customer, teach salespeople to get comfortable putting those provocative insights on the table, holding their ground when the customer pushes back, tailoring how it's delivered to different stakeholders, but coming up with the idea from the get-go, in the beginning. That's really the job of marketing and product and the other leaders around the table. So I always tell people in the audience, look, all this stuff, this is on you as salespeople. This is on you as sales managers. And then, by the way, all you guys sitting over here in product and marketing and all the supporting cast, sales operations, sales enablement, it's on you guys to come up with those insights. You're not going to be a challenge organization without everyone rowing in the same direction, everyone pulling their weight.
I love it. You issue them a challenge, then it's out the door. Matt's done. It's like, there you go. I told you what to do. Have fun.
Good luck, right?
Yeah.
Good luck. It's hard work, right?
Yeah.
It's hard work. And like I said, there are I will always tell a CSO, chief revenue officer, chief commercial officer, when we're talking about a keynote, is this is going to get people to think. And what's going to happen is I'll leave, I'll interact with the team, but when I leave, they're going to be asking you and the leadership team hard questions, right? Yeah. What are we going to do to prepare our people to take on this brave new world of customer buying behavior where customers are boxing us out? Because when I tell that story from the big stage, I get a lot of nodding heads from salespeople. They see this stuff every single day, and they're like, thank God somebody brought data to bear. You convinced everyone that things are different today. You gave language to it, but then they're going to look to their managers, to leaders, to support them on not just improving their own selling skills, but with those insights, with all the stuff they're going to need to go out and be an effective challenger in the marketplace.
Yeah. No, that's good. That is good. Matt, we're up against a ending here, but thanks so much for the time. For people who are interested in learning more about Matt, go to our website, executivespeakers.com, search Matt Dixon. You can get bio, testimonials, and video. Also booking information on Matt. He has been on fire this year. A lot of organizations have brought him in for multiple keynotes. And obviously you can tell the content is awesome and top shelf. So anyways, Matt, good luck. Have a good rest of your fall, man, and we'll be chatting with you soon.
Thanks, Stephen. Take care.
All right, cool.